video is broadcast on Mark Levin Show channel. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the channel.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. I hope you'll stick with us tonight for our 3 hours. I think you agree it was worth it on Friday. Many people are repeating today what we said the other day, and that's good. We're going to discuss a little bit impeachment, because that's where all this is headed. If you'll allow me, let us please set this up, not because I said these things months ago, but because I want to make a very, very important point about impeachment. There will be few other hosts, few other outlets, few other platforms where an individual knows as much about this as I do. Throughout my career, I've studied the Constitution. But let's begin the day after Election Day, November 9, 2016. The election recall was November 8th. Again, there's an important reason that I'm going through this. It's not self-aggrandizement. Count one, go. Let me tell you what the Democrats mean to do to you, Mr. Trump. They intend to sabotage you. They intend to sabotage you every step of the way and then blame you. They intend to look for every opportunity to criminalize the politics that swirls around you. And they're good at it, and they do it. And if necessary, they intend to try to impeach you. Trust me when I tell you this is their agenda. They are vicious. They are ideologues. They have a Soviet-style mentality. They will not allow an election to get in their way. Okay, that was November 9, 2016, the day after the election. The day after. 2 days later, 3 days after the election. 3 days. Cut two, go. And they will lay in wait, as I also told you, the day after, Tuesday, Wednesday, by my calendar, that they will try and lay the case for the eventual impeachment of Trump. I'm quite serious about this. You watch. Mark my words. Circle the date on the calendar. Wednesday passed. They're going to spend the next 2 years, after maybe a month or 2 or 3 or 4 of smiling as they sharpen their knives, they're going to spend the rest of the 2-year period doing everything they can to create scandal, to create controversy and provocation. Anybody who serves in this administration is going to be fair game. These leftists use the same tactics as the Marxists. You see them in the streets now? You think these billionaires like Soros are just going to go away? They're already plotting. They're already meeting in their little hotel rooms. They're already doing the things that leftists, radical kooks do. You think they believe in the system? They only believe in the system if they win. They don't accept defeat, ever. And Schumer's the worst of the bunch. And they're plotting right now. Mark my words, they are plotting right now, trying to figure out ways to bring down this administration, even before the week is over. And so is Obama. November 11, 2016. Then, 3 days after the president is sworn in the inauguration, I return to this issue of impeachment. Cut three, go.
The same Praetorian Guard media that protected Obama every step of the way, all of his scandals, his horrendous lawlessness. Now they're all over Trump. They've sent every Cub reporter and everybody above. Everywhere they can go, find dirt, take the guy down. And they're working closely with somebody, ladies and gentlemen, I believe. A malcontent, a miscreant by the name of David Brock. And over at the Washington Free Beacon, Joe Schofstall has a piece, confidential David Brock memo. This is Media Matters for America, a.k.a. Media matters for whatever. Defeat Trump through impeachment. Now, I've been telling you about this on radio and TV now for a long time. They're going to try and build up scandals. They're going to try and create ethics issues, probably with his business activities. That's where they are, or his tax return, whatever it is. They're going to look. They're going to fight. This is what they're good at. Soviet-style tactics against their opponents. Chuck Schumer and his crowd, they're not honorable people. They're the opposite. They're dishonorable people. Like David Brock, that little puke. A confidential David Brock memo obtained by the Washington Free Beacon lays out the ways the Democratic operative plans to use his numerous organizations to take down President Donald Trump through impeachment. Remember, this fool is also funded or has been funded in part by George Soros. Brock is currently at the Turnberry Isle Resort in Aventura, Florida, for a weekend conference with more than 100 major liberal donors. Attendees are mapping out a course to combat the newly sworn-in president. According to the private, you know what, I have to say this. I'll hold my tongue. According to the private and confidential memo, Brock plans to defeat Trump, quote, through impeachment, unquote. I'll say what I meant. These are like the brown shirts of the left. What did he say? He didn't say anything close to what Judd said. The brown shirts of the left. Okay, call them red shirts. Whatever you want to. No other progressive organization has the resources and assets, I'm quoting, that American Bridge has amassed over the past several election cycles to hold Trump, his administration, and the politicians accountable, says the 44-page confidential memo. Only Bridge, that's his group, only Bridge stands ready with staff already hired. Trump's web of business, Trump's web of business ties mapped out, and a massive video archive at our fingerprints. So they're going to use the fact that the man is a successful businessman and try and get him all caught up.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, in June of this year, June 15th, after Mueller had been appointed and he began his crusade, let me go to February 13, 2017. I used a phrase that I've used before, which has now been picked up by others, to define what the ultimate purpose here is. This is February 13, less than a month after the President of the United States, Donald Trump, was sworn in. Cut 4, go. All of Trump's staffers don't have clean hands. All of his administration officials don't have clean hands. A lot of this stuff comes from the inside, but a lot of it comes from Obama holdovers. That's the plan. I'm telling you, they're coordinating this. Schumer holds back as many of these cabinet officials as possible. The Obama flunkies have weaseled their way into the bureaucracy, and they have no intention of leaving. You've already read, and we talked about it last week, of these clandestine avenues of communication within the bureaucracy because they don't want to be found out by the president or by people like us through the Freedom of Information Act. This is a silent coup. That's what it is. This is an effort to, whether you agree with all his policies or not, and I don't agree with all his policies, but I do agree with several of them. Whether you do or not is not the issue. The point is we have like an underground or a shadow government going on here. We have two former presidents who do not know their place because they are relatively young men, or they were when they're president, and they are, may I say, Clinton and Obama, really punks. That's the way I view it. Very immature narcissists and nihilists. And they're not going to allow something like an election, particularly through the Electoral College, to get in their way. Bill Clinton's furious his wife didn't win, even though he's mistreated her more than any other human being on the face of the earth. Barack Obama's furious that Hillary didn't win because now he's concerned about his agenda, not about America, not about the country. So I've been pointing out this impeachment mentality from day one, that it is in fact an attempt at a coup, a silent coup. You'll remember the left became incredibly violent, including at the inauguration. They started to attack the Electoral College, any process that fails to deliver them an absolute victory. And now we have Special Counsel Mueller. He shouldn't be called Special Counsel. The proper name for Mueller now is Special Impeachment Counsel. Special Impeachment Counsel. Back in June, I reiterated what the goal was here, impeachment. And that now Special Impeachment Counsel Mueller, a report that he would issue, not a formal report, because he's not an independent counsel, but a report, a statement of some sort, depending on how he files his open court papers and so forth, will be aimed and are aimed at impeaching Donald Trump. From June 15 of this year, cut 5, go. So why would they be investigating the President of the United States for obstruction of justice when, number one, it's an impossibility in this case, since he has the constitutional power to fire any inferior officer for any reason. And number two, the facts, even if he didn't have that power, simply do not justify it. If that's the purpose of the special counsel's investigation, among others, and if it is the official position of the Department of Justice that you cannot indict a sitting president, then you know what Robert Mueller's doing? Do you know, Mr. Producer? He's going to write a report one day. You'll read this at National Review in 3 months. Stick with me. He's going to write a report one day, which he knows, which Comey knows, which Schumer knows, and they're all friends, those three. They're all tight. Will be used as the basis for impeachment if they can win the House of Representatives. Mr. Mueller may be investigating individuals and so forth, but his purpose for being unleashed against the President of the United States is to make the case for impeachment, not indictment. This is very, very important to understand. This is why the Democrats are so enthusiastic about him in particular and about that position, and why they want it as broad as possible. This is the plan. I don't doubt it for a minute. That was almost half a year ago. Almost half a year. Now, why am I raising all this? To show you how smart I am? Not at all. What is impeachment supposed to be about? What is impeachment supposed to be for? It's not to impeach a president and then seek to remove him from office for policy disputes or differences of opinion or errors in judgment. It's not supposed to be used by the legislature, the Congress, to paralyze a president and paralyze his administration. It's not supposed to be used for superheated partisanship and political purposes. And yet from day one, this has been the position of the Democrat Party and the media and the left. Impeachment is supposed to be an absolute last resort for addressing a president outside the criminal justice system, addressing a president who has conducted himself in a way that significantly, if not overwhelmingly, does damage to our constitutional system or does serious injury to our republic. I've heard people say, well, you can impeach somebody for anything. That's not the history of impeachment. That's not what impeachment's supposed to be about at all. This isn't Britain, where impeachment was ubiquitous, where impeachment applied to any public official. This isn't a battle between a parliament and a king. We have separation of powers. Separation of powers. And this separation of powers system is teetering on disaster. And it's been for a long time. When the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, acting as the acting Attorney General of the United States, appointed Robert Mueller as special counsel to investigate essentially all things, he violated, in my view, the construct of the Constitution. It's one thing to have a special counsel with a very, very specific mandate to assist the Department of Justice in its work. It's quite another to unleash a special counsel without a specific mandate who can rove the countryside looking for crimes or alleged crimes on all matters against all people. That's not our constitutional system. That's not how it's supposed to work. Mr. Mueller has no constitutional foundation, none whatsoever. He is a creation. He is a figment of a super partisan time in our history, and he simply does not, moreover, have the temperament for this job. He's like a hamster on a hamster wheel who keeps running, just keeps running in place, running. Pick off as many people as he can, no matter what the so-called offense. Punish them, brutalize them, break them emotionally and financially in order to achieve some end, which is, in this case, the impeachment of the President of the United States. The Democrat Party knows exactly what it's doing. The Democrat Party doesn't give a damn about the Constitution. They defended Barack Obama and his multiple violations of the Constitution. They defend federal district judges and appellate judges who are regularly violating the Constitution. More on that on the immigration issue in a little bit. So the Democrats wanted a special counsel not to uphold the Constitution, but to continue to destroy it. And Mr. Mueller and his hand-picked group of hacks, many of whom contributed to Hillary and or Obama. And there's a special FBI agent you've heard about all day, and I'll get into that. This entire enterprise has as its purpose not to uphold the rule of law, but to destroy a presidency and further degrade our constitutional system. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Situation here where a roving prosecutor who believes himself to be answerable to nobody is doing the bidding of a political party, of a movement, and was appointed by a deputy attorney general because the attorney general recused himself. The deputy attorney general also did not follow Department of Justice guidelines by giving him a very, very broad mandate and failing to rein him in. So this is a rogue special impeachment prosecutor. It's exactly what he is. You're going to hear people say that impeachment is a political question. That's only good to some extent. It goes further than that. Impeachment is a constitutional question. And the members of the House, like the members of the Senate, like the President of the United States, like all federal employees, take an oath to uphold the Constitution. To say it's a political question means that you can try and remove a president for any reason, which of course would completely subvert, if not eviscerate, the whole notion of separation of powers. So it's more than a political question. It's a constitutional issue. More when I return.
Liberty's voice, Mark Levin. Talk with that voice now. 877-381-3811.
Now the focus seems to be zoning in on the firing of James Comey. Now isn't that ironic? There is no dispute whatsoever that the president can fire the head of the FBI. The president nominates the head of the FBI. And the president and the FBI director has a 10-year term. The reason the FBI director has a 10-year term wasn't because of concern that he or she might be overly influenced by a president, and so, they get these long terms. No. The reason they got a 10-year term was to hope that they were independent. James Comey has demonstrated he was not independent. His handling of the Hillary Clinton eavesdropping case, among other things. He's also demonstrated that he's the one who should be in the dock. Stealing government documents, that's what he did, I wasn't stealing the jewelry from the house. I was only borrowing it. I wanted to take it, to a social event. No. You can't steal documents and then claim you put them back. Now, in the case of the government, it includes copies of documents. That's the government's proprietary information. Mr. Comey knew it, and he took them anyway. He made copies, and he gave some to third parties, including the New York Times, through a subterfuge, and he knew the New York Times shouldn't have had those documents, and we don't know to whom else he has leaked. But a nice grand jury appearance has a way of getting people to reveal themselves. So what is it exactly, this obstruction of justice that's being talked about? He interfered with the Russia investigation? Does it look like anybody interfered with the Russia investigation? The deputy director of the FBI, who became the acting FBI director when Comey was rightly kicked out of office, said at the time before the House committee, I believe, or a Senate committee, that they had plenty of resources and nobody had stopped them and they were continuing. There's no direct order from the president, even though he could, by the way. There's no direct order from the president. None. And we have Mr. Mueller. Mr. Mueller has not brought a single case, a single charge against anybody for colluding with the Russians to help the Trump campaign during the campaign. Nothing. Zero. So what's the obstruction? That he might have? Now, as for Mr. Flynn speaking to the Russians, and by the way, dozens of other countries, which is never mentioned. Russia was one of the countries. At the reported direction or alleged direction of another senior official, it really doesn't matter who it was. People are saying, oh, this is a violation of the Logan Act. Well, nobody believes it's a violation of the Logan Act. Nobody. Except left-wing kooks, some of whom are members of Congress and some of whom may work for Mr. Mueller. A law that was passed in 1799 has never been successfully used against anybody. And, of course, as I keep pointing out, Mr. Flynn was not your average citizen conducting foreign policy. He wasn't conducting foreign policy at all. And he certainly wasn't an average citizen. He was coming in a senior position of the incoming administration, as everybody knew. The phone call, I believe, was made December 29th, 3 weeks before Donald Trump was to be sworn in. So there's nothing untoward about this, nothing ahistorical about this, nothing. Certainly nothing illegal or criminal about it. Mark Toner, Obama State Department spokesman, on January 13, 2017, 7 days before Donald Trump was sworn in, was asked about this by Matt Lee of the Associated Press. You know, Flynn contacting other governments and so forth, including Russia. See, it was known back then. And here's what he said. Cut 6, go.
Probably have seen reports starting yesterday, but then more of them this morning about contact between the incoming national security advisor and the Russian ambassador. I'm just wondering, from the State Department's point of view, is this something that's of concern at all, or I'll just leave it there and then follow up?
Again, not necessarily. I've seen the reports. I don't think they've been confirmed or corroborated yet. But that's as he's part of the transition team. That's really for them to speak to and how they are engaging. I mean, the president-elect is also engaged on his own with many world leaders. So I don't want to speculate, and I don't want to.
No, there's nothing. This building doesn't see anything necessarily inappropriate about contact between members of the incoming administration and foreign officials, no matter what country they're from.
No.
Right?
No. And again, this has been ongoing. I mean, we stand ready if they want to work through the State Department to contact some of these individuals, but we have no comment or no problem with them doing such on their own.
Absolute non-issue. Then ask yourself, you're Robert Mueller, and you're hack prosecutors, and you're sitting around, and you have access to a transcript, if not an actual recording, of Mike Flynn talking to the Russian ambassador. We know this. It was either through the FISA warrant or through the backdoor gathering of information on the Russian ambassador, who is being eavesdropped upon, and the unmasking of Mr. Flynn and the felonious leaking of his identity by somebody on the inside to the media. There's a felony. I'm sure that Robert Mueller will follow up on it any day now. Now, in interviewing, just to show you how nefarious this guy Mueller and his staff are, in interviewing General Flynn, they knew what General Flynn had discussed with the ambassador of Russia. They knew there wasn't any collusion. They knew, as a matter of substance, there wasn't any violation of anything. a traditional discussion. In this case, it was about the UN resolution that was being pushed by the Obama administration on the way out the door to eviscerate Israel. It was really the Obama administration at the last minute who was doing very, very untoward things that prior administrations had never done before. And it really doesn't even matter what Flynn discussed, unless he was hatching some criminal scheme, and he wasn't, because he wasn't charged with that. He didn't plead to that. So when they questioned General Flynn, they already knew about General Flynn. They already knew what he discussed with the Russian ambassador, so it was a setup. And unfortunately, General Flynn apparently fell into their trap. Now, keep something in mind. General Flynn was fighting them tooth and nail, day in and day out, until he ran out of money, apparently, until it was crushing the family emotionally. They were threatening his son, and he said that's enough. So it's not like Mueller's really seeking the truth. Mueller's seeking destiny and legacy. Mueller's acting out of power and politics. The goal, again, is to write some nasty document in some form and to condemn the president, who, after all, fired his dear friend Jim Comey. Now, as for the firing of Comey, we all know that if Hillary Clinton had been president of the United States and fired Jim Comey, she would be lauded by the Democrats and the media. We also know 1 second before Donald Trump did in fact fire Jim Comey, the Democrats demanded his head. And then after Trump fired him, as I said at the time, they will use this. It's more important for them to now reverse course, prop up Comey, build him into some angelic figure, a Joseph story, if you will, and then go after Trump for obstruction. This has been their position from day one. We have a little montage of Democrats calling on Comey to resign before Trump fired him. This could have gone on for 20, 30 minutes, but we shortened it. Cut 7, go.
The FBI director, okay, you violated these 2 protocols.
That kind of an ambiguity bomb this close to election was a terrible lapse in judgment.
I agree with Eric Holder. I think here Director Comey made a great mistake.
I call it an October betrayal of long-standing FBI protocol.
Was acting in concert and coordination with the House Republicans. End of story.
I think that Comey acted in an outrageous way.
Should he step down?
I think he should take a hard look at what he has done, and I think it would not be a bad thing for the American people.
Do you believe that Jim Comey should resign, Senator Reid?
Of course.
All I can tell you is the FBI director has no credibility.
The president ought to fire Comey immediately, and he ought to initiate an investigation.
Maybe he's not in the right job.
So, yes, that was her, Nancy Pelosi, Nadler, Maxine Waters, Harry Reid, Bernie Sanders, James Carville, Barbara Boxer, John Lewis, Adam Schiff, Tim Kaine. They all condemned him. They all condemned who he was, what he had done. Several of them wanted him out. Trump fires him, and then they go, oh, the great Jim Comey? A professional? A man who's supposed to be independent from the president, which, of course, is absurd. The great Jim Comey? Oh, my gosh, firing him. Trump must have fired him because he wanted to stop the Russia investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no Russia investigation anymore. There's no Russia investigation. Robert Mueller is not conducting a Russia investigation. He's not conducting a collusion investigation. He's off to the races. He didn't find anything under the Russia collusion Trump rock, so he's looking under other rocks. There's no evidence whatsoever that they're conducting a Russia investigation. They're conducting a Trump impeachment investigation. They are an arm, in effect, a legal arm of the Democrat Party in the House of Representatives in the United States Senate. Mr. Mueller is a special impeachment counsel. It's it. That's it. That's it. You can thank Rob Rosenstein, who appointed him and gave him a wide berth in terms of what he could investigate and will not pull it back. The evidence is overwhelming. that Mueller has moved on, that he's not conducting a Russia collusion investigation. It's also overwhelming on the political side when Democrat after Democrat after Democrat are now arguing obstruction of justice, not Russian collusion. They won't even use those phrases anymore. You couldn't stop them before. But now you see it's obstruction of an investigation of Russia. An investigation of nothing. There was nothing there, and one isn't even going on anymore. When we come back, I'll give you examples of that, too. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Mrs. Fields cookies. Now, if you're like me, your favorite part of going to the mall as a kid was stopping by Mrs. Fields. It'll probably be your favorite part of going holiday shopping this year, too. Something about that first soft bite of the perfect chocolate chip cookie just makes you feel like a kid again. So this holiday season, you can give your friends and family that same feeling of pure joy with a holiday gift arrangement from Mrs. Fields. Mrs. Fields has been around for 40 years. And her cookies are unbelievable. Everyone knows and loves them. Remember the very first time you had one? It's like you finally knew what a chocolate chip cookie should taste like. They're so soft and chocolatey. Just thinking about those cookies makes my mouth water. And Mrs. Fields cookies, they're handmade, every one of them. They're freshly baked. They're ready to enjoy right out of the box. So everyone can have what they've always wanted right now. Now here, I have an exclusive for you, my beloved listeners. Go to MrsFields.com, MrsFields.com. Do it right away. Click on the microphone at the upper right-hand corner and enter code LEVIN, L-E-V-I-N. You know what happens? You save 20% on any Mrs. Fields product, including their best-selling Peace, Love, and Cookies tin, which comes with holiday favorites like Nibbler's bite-sized cookies, brownie bites, and more. And I happen to know this is great because I ordered it for my family, and we had it during Thanksgiving. Just click on the microphone, enter promo code LEVIN, L-E-V-I-N, to get 20% off site-wide at MrsFields.com. MrsFields.com, promo code LEVIN. Boy, oh boy, what a combination. They love to bake the cookies. I love to eat the cookies. All right, Mr. Producer, let's begin our painful march through liberal malcontent land. Diane Frankenfeinstein on Meet the Depressed. Cut 9, go.
As you know, I'm ranking on Judiciary, and the Judiciary Committee has an investigation going as well, and it involves obstruction of justice. And I think what we're beginning to see is the putting together of a case of obstruction of justice. I think we see this in the indictments, the 4 indictments and pleas that have just...
Whoa. The case of Manafort and Gates has to do with their financial activities in the past, well before this campaign. They're failing to report their as foreign agents, which has never been successfully prosecuted, maybe once in the entire history of the country, or the history of the regulation. So that has nothing to do with obstruction. Mr. Papadopoulos, his plea on one count of false statements. I hope everybody realizes while it's important to tell the truth to federal authorities when you're asked, assuming you put yourself in a position where you're going to be asked without a lawyer, bad advice, but if that's what you do, you need to tell the truth. Now, that said, if you're looking into this broad systemic conspiracy of Russian involvement in the election to help elect Trump, and the Trump people are all involved in it, this is Mickey Mouse stuff, absolute Mickey Mouse stuff for federal prosecutors. This is like the bottom rack. You can't go any lower than this. One false statement. It's not even perjury. You understand? It's not even obstruction. And they pulled the same thing with a general, Flynn. No, there's no example of obstruction of justice. Obstruction of justice of what? Go ahead.
The comments that are being made. I see it in the hyperphonetic attitude of the White House, the comments every day, the continual tweets.
See, ladies and gentlemen, she's laying out a case which would drive the framers absolutely crazy. She doesn't like Trump. She doesn't like his tweets. She doesn't like his comments. So she wants to remove him from office. They have always wanted to remove him from office because they never felt he should be in office. And not just him. Some of the dug-in fools that used to work for Bush, some of the dug-in fools that pretend to be conservatives, it's pathetic. They won't even stand up for the Constitution. They won't even stand up for what's right, even if they dislike the man, even if they disagree with the man. Go ahead.
And I see it most importantly in what happened with the firing of Director Comey. And it is my belief that that is directly because he did not agree to lift the cloud of the Russia investigation. That's obstruction of justice.
Isn't that incredible? She claims it's obstruction of justice. First of all, the Senate Judiciary Committee has no authority to do any criminal investigations. They're the legislative branch. You know what they do? They write stupid bills and they run up the debt. That's number one. Number two, it has nothing to do with obstruction of justice. There have been more investigations inside the executive branch and outside the executive branch of this so-called Russian collusion. She doesn't even use that phrase anymore. But if the firing of Jim Comey, the purpose of the firing of Jim Comey was to interfere with the Russia investigation, then why did Tim Kaine, Adam Schiff, John Lewis, Barbara Boxer, James Carville, Bernie Sanders, Harry Reid, Maxine Waters, Gerald Nadler, and Nancy Pelosi favor firing Jim Comey? Were they obstructing with some investigation, too? Of Russia? I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. These programs require 3 hours. I apologize. We have to take our time and march through this stuff. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. The senior levels of the FBI have been politically corrupted. If that's what the president meant, the president is correct. And it amazes me. The media had no problem when Barack, Milhouse, Hussein, Obama, and Herrick, held in contempt, Holder, were trashing local law enforcement. We're nationalizing local law enforcement. We're racializing local law enforcement and so forth and so on. That was considered magnificent, an advancement for civil rights and so forth and so on. When this president points out what is obvious to everybody now, that the senior levels, I'll interpret what he was saying because I believe it's correct, the senior levels of the FBI are politically corrupted, I don't think there's any question about it. You had McCabe, the number 2 FBI director involved in the investigation of Hillary Clinton, at the same time his wife's running for state senate in Virginia with the backing of a Hillary Clinton friend, counsel, advisor, and political, supporter. That is Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat governor of Virginia. And he poured through his various organizations and so forth $500,000 into a state senate campaign. McCabe didn't tell anybody. It was later found out. And, of course, he should have recused himself from everything. But he didn't. Now we see the lead investigator in the Hillary Clinton espionage case, who gave her a pass, who rewrote the statute from gross negligence in the handling of classified information to specific intent in order to save her. The lead investigator, where there were 20 or so top witnesses who weren't interviewed while a memo was being prepared by Comey to let her off the hook. Incredible, right? The lead investigator is a Trump hater. Not only was the lead investigator in the espionage case, he's been a lead investigator for Mueller, at least up till and through much of the summer, on Donald Trump world. Turns out he's texting anti-Trump stuff with a lawyer in the FBI who he's having an affair with, an extramarital affair with, and the FBI still hasn't released the texts, and Mr. Mueller still hasn't released the text. As a matter of fact,
this whole sordid spectacle of the politicization of the senior levels of the FBI and the politicization of the special counsel's office has been kept from the House Intelligence Committee, where the chairman, a hero, I think, Devin Nunes, has been demanding for months to know why this specific FBI agent was removed from his job. He's been trying to get to the bottom of that. Adam Schiff doesn't give a damn. The Democrats don't care. They'd probably cheer this FBI agent. But Mr. Mueller never told them. In fact, isn't it interesting? In the same 24-hour period, the New York Times and the Washington Post both came out with a story about this FBI agent saying almost the same thing, essentially the same thing. That is a leak from Mr. Mueller or his office or the top levels of the FBI to position this outrageous event. In addition to having an FBI agent like this on staff. Don't tell me they just found out about it. It was the Inspector General who found the texts. The Justice Department Inspector General. Mueller has hired people who have exactly the same viewpoint. 9 of his 16 prosecutors, 16, donated to either or both the Obama and Hillary Clinton campaigns. Now, why would you bring people on like that? Well, we know why. He wanted them not only to be among the greatest hacks out there, but he wanted them to be ideologically identical to himself, because he is, after all, the special impeachment counsel. So when the president talked about the FBI, he was correct, and it was fascinating to see Eric Holder jump to the defense of the FBI. Eric Holder, who has eviscerated law enforcement, Eric Holder, who was held in contempt by Congress, all of a sudden, he's a character witness. He has no reputation, or the extent he has when it's a lousy reputation. Trashing law enforcement his entire career. Now they act like they're pro-law enforcement. And it turns out, ladies and gentlemen, this FBI agent, this top agent, his name is not an easy one. It's S-T-R-Z-O-K. Zarczak. Peter Zarczak. Top level. One of the great FBI investigators, were assured by the New York Times and the Washington Post. But he couldn't get Hillary. Helen Keller could have gotten Hillary, but he couldn't get Hillary. And Trump, obstruction. Obstruction of what? And you see, here's what happened. Trump disrupted these politically corrupt, or the politically corrupt levels of the FBI. He disrupted it by firing Comey. They were happy. They were doing their thing. And he fired the guy. And now they're striking back. They've got their buddy Mueller in there, a former FBI director. They're defending Comey, a former FBI director. They're leaking like hell all over the place. And, of course, the contemptible Praetorian Guard media, rather than seeing the tyranny of all this, celebrates it because they hate Trump. They want him out, by all means. So Devin Nunes, who is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, has been demanding information for months about this situation, and he has to read about it in the New York Times and the Washington Post. New York Times and Washington Post. Obstruction, you see. You heard Feinstein. Dianne Franken-Feinstein will meet the depressed. Now, Senator Richard Blumenthal, who is a regular guest on the Morning Schmo and Mr. Schmo show, even though the man lied through his teeth about being a Vietnam combat veteran. Yeah, look at this schmo. Vietnam combat veteran? Anyway, here he is, Senator Blumenthal. Cut 10, go.
We're at a real testing time for this country when people are going to either speak up and stand up and challenge the President of the United States, or they won't. The White House is a very heady, place. Power is a very powerfully addictive drug, and Donald Trump is a very formidable personality. But
Stop. So far he has said nothing of substance. Rambling on like a homeless person. Go ahead.
Stand up to him, and I hope my Republican colleagues in the United States Senate will take the lead on this issue and also on obstruction of justice. There is a credible case of obstruction of justice against Donald Trump.
So all the Democrats in the Senate have met, and now this is it, and in the House, obstruction of justice, obstruction of justice, obstruction of justice. The intent here is to take out this president in a silent coup, but also, in the meantime, to paralyze him. To paralyze him, his senior staff, his administration, people looking over their shoulders, people pointing fingers at each other, people leaking against each other. It's to disrupt this administration. It is straight out of the Marxist playbook. It really is. Alinsky, more than Alinsky. It is to disrupt a legitimate administration, legitimately elected, no Russian collusion, and to create criminal behavior. Create criminal outcomes. Concoct impeachable offenses. This is the silent coup I've been talking about. And, of course, on the morning schmo with that big dope, they're given voice. Because he doesn't give a crap about the country either. He thinks Manhattan is the whole country. Representative Ted Lieu, another schmo, out of California, also on MSNBC. Cut 11, go.
So there appears to be two tracks here. You can go down the legal track, or you can go down the political track towards impeachment. Which one do you think is the president, or should the president be more concerned about?
This woman's name is Alex Witt, a.k.a. Alex Witt-Liss. Look at the assumptions in her question. I'm telling you, folks, the left is playing with fire. The media are playing with fire. The Democrats are playing with fire. They go through with this, 1/3 of the country, because 1/3 is, oblivious to everything, and the other third is, of course, out to turn America into something else. They're going to have 1/3 of this country in such an anger mode, such fury. They're playing with fire because they will not accept a 4-year term for this man who was elected legitimately and hasn't committed any crimes and hasn't violated the Constitution. Not even close. Not even close. The reason in the first hour I played what I said back then was to point out that this is all a subterfuge. It is a pretext to remove a man from office. There's only a handful of honest liberals left. Why do you think Dershowitz is all over TV on this stuff? He sees exactly what I see. Why do you think McCarthy's writing there at National Review? He sees exactly what I see. I see exactly what they see. And I can go on and on and on. You think Dershowitz voted for Trump? He voted for Hillary. I think McCarthy was a never Trumper. I can't remember. He's a dear friend of mine. We all see it. This is an attack on republicanism. It is an illegitimate attack on a legitimate president. Now, we put up with Obama for 8 years, but they refuse. They refuse to accept Trump. That's exactly what's going on. Go ahead.
I think it's closer to him right now.
Well, we know that for Richard Nixon, he was not brought down because of the underlying crimes. He was brought down for obstruction of justice. That was the first article of impeachment. The second article was dereliction of duty. And we're seeing that here today. We're seeing the President of the United States commit obstruction of justice in plain view.
Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Richard Nixon directed a cover-up of the Watergate break-in. It even moved monies around from the campaign to re-elect the president, or creep, as they call it. And maybe it is that Mueller thinks he's Archibald Cox or whomever. But Ted Lieu is an idiot. But it doesn't matter if he's an idiot. This is what they're doing. Go ahead.
And I think we should let Special Counsel Mueller's investigation continue forward. He is getting closer every day that goes by, and it may be a very...
See, Mueller hears this stuff and he loves it. He says, here we got the Democrats, they support us, let's keep plowing ahead. After all, most of my staff made up of Democrats, they feel the same way and so forth. And we got to get to the bottom of this crime, ladies and gentlemen. What crime? What crime? What does Trump have to hide? Nothing. Then we have Adam Schiff, a regular on ABC and the rest of these programs. Stephanopoulos. Here's the irony here. This is one of the reasons you have nothing but contempt for the media. Stephanopoulos was a hatchet man for Clinton. And now you have Stephanopoulos dressed up as a journalist speaking to a hatchet man for Pelosi. Adam Schiff. So I told you, don't watch any TV this weekend. There's no point in it. Cut 12, go.
His attorneys are starting to take it a step further. They're Jay Sekulow to the New Yorker, Jeffrey Toobin to the New Yorker, laying the groundwork that collusion, even if it were shown, is not a crime.
Well, it's not a crime. Do you have a... first of all, it hasn't been shown. Secondly, it's not a crime. This isn't an antitrust case. Doesn't even mean anything. What do we mean by collusion? Go ahead.
The president has to deny something 3 times in a row raises a profound question about whether it's true. Now here, I think you see the most palpable evidence of a collusion in terms of violating the Logan Act.
Okay, so now we have the Logan Act. The Logan Act. Most of you never heard of the Logan Act. Passed in 1799. The goal was to discourage individual citizens from claiming to negotiate foreign policy on behalf of the new country. Fairly new country. It's nothing to do with what took place here. You have an incoming president with a transition team where Flynn is asked to reach out to a number of governments, including the Russian government, but not exclusively the Russian government, on behalf of the incoming administration. The Logan Act doesn't even have any application to this. But Adam Schiff is a hack. And so they give him voice on ABC News. They should dismiss these people as nutty. But they won't dismiss them as nutty because they want you to hear them. Go ahead.
Now, I agree that's not likely to be prosecuted, but let's look at that. You have the Trump transition conspiring in private with the Russians to subvert the bipartisan policy of the United States, which was to sanction Russia over its interference in our election.
Can you believe this guy was once a prosecutor? I feel sorry for anybody that had to deal with this guy. So the Trump transition is conspiring in private with the Russians to subvert the bipartisan policy of the United States. Did not Mr. Toner, the former Obama spokesman, 3 days before the president was sworn in, say that they have no problem with the incoming administration speaking with people like that? It's done all the time and so forth and so on. And yet Mr. Schiff finds a conspiracy in private with the Russians to subvert the bipartisan policy of the United States. Go ahead.
And so the question becomes, if they're willing to work secretly and privately at odds with U.S. policy during the transition...
All right, forget that. Go to cut 13. Go.
And if Michael Flynn were to testify that these contacts with the Russians were directed by the president, what would that tell you? Because we all know that during transitions, administrations have contacts with foreign officials all the time.
Well, what that would tell me is that one of the reasons that he was intervening, the president, that is, with James Comey, was that he knew that this would come to light and that he wanted to protect Mike
He knew
Flynn.
that it would come to light? That he directed a subordinate to talk with a foreign government? That's perfectly legitimate. Otherwise, we got to bring Barack Obama into court and put him in prison. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I want you to hear Susan Collins. You tell me she isn't a saboteur. On Meet the Press, cut 14, go.
I'm curious, the scope, does it
Does it include the transition? Because I know the scope's about the campaign. Does that include the transition?
Yes.
You believe the scope of the Intel Committee does include the transition? Everything up till January 20th or even more?
It not only includes the transition period, it includes the campaign period.
Right.
And that's why we're looking at the conversations that occurred during that period as well.
Do you have a sense of where Mueller is in his probe? Do you feel as if this is the end of the beginning, beginning of the end? Where do you guys have a sense of the length of this probe right now?
Although we're in touch, or the chairman is in touch with the special counsel, it's very difficult to say. But clearly he is making progress. He's had guilty pleas from 2 individuals. He's had 2 other indictments. So he is making progress.
He's making progress. This idiot is part of the problem. It's absolutely unbelievable. I'll be right back.
Conservative and proud of it. Call the Mark Levin Show at 877-381-3811.
Now, prior to last Friday, I seem to recall there were daily reports of politicians and Hollywood types, mostly liberals, mostly Democrats, who were exposing themselves, who were giving sex toys to each other, who had buttons under their desk to lock the door from within in order to molest interns and things of that sort. Apparently that doesn't go on anymore, Mr. Producer. Apparently it's all cleaned up. The, as they call it, sexual harassment training, that was pretty fast. And so we don't hear about members of Congress now. We don't hear about people in Hollywood molesting, groping, assaulting, battering. We don't hear it anymore. Because now, this week, it's obstruction of justice week. All these Democrats, and you can Google them yourselves, all these Democrats, one after another, who wanted Comey out, were they obstructing justice? When they were pressuring for Comey to leave, demanding his head, were they obstructing justice? Were they obstructing the investigation into Hillary Rotten Clinton and her violations, serial, multiple violations of the Espionage Act? Were they obstructing justice, ladies and gentlemen? Should they be expelled when they're not committing acts of sexual molestation? Getting a good night's sleep, that's easier said than done, of course, especially if you hear a noise downstairs. What do you do in that situation? You could turn on all the lights and keep watch. You can sleep with one eye open, or you can rest easy, knowing that your home and family are protected with Simply Safe. Each Simply Safe system is a complete security arsenal with motion sensors, glass break sensors, entry sensors, and a high-definition security camera. You'll have everything you need to keep your family safe. Order Simply Safe online in just minutes. Have it on your doorstep this week. Set it up in under an hour. No tools, no hard wiring. Just open the box, plug it in. You'll be protected with professional home security. With Simply Safe, there are no contracts, there are no hidden fees, and 24/7 professional monitoring is just $14.99 a month. Get Simply Safe and get some rest. Go to simplysafemark.com and get a special 10% discount when you order today. That's simplysafemark.com for 10% off your order. Simplysafemark.com. I guess they changed it again, huh, Mr. Producer? I thought you had to go to simplysafemark.com and enter code MARK. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I suspect you need to go to simplysafemark.com and enter code MARK. Just as a matter of logic. I know there's a lot to go through here, but it is very tawdry what's taking place. Very tawdry. Now, Nancy Pelosi. Oh, yes, stretch. Nancy Pelosi, of course, is she's trying to call these people off from impeachment. You remember back in November, No, don't talk about impeachment right now. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Wait till we take the House. Remember her? Cut 15, go.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says that if you and the Democrats take the House back in 2018, the first thing you will do is impeach President Trump. Is that true?
No, I believe that whatever we do, we have a responsibility, first and foremost, to unify the nation. Second of all, you can't go down any path without the facts and the law. If that's there, perhaps it will come out in these investigations.
All right, so you get the drift. So, but we know Maxine Waters has been out there day in and day out. I'm not going to waste your time with her. Now, you've probably heard by now 4,000 or 5,000 times about Brian Ross and ABC's World News Tonight on Friday. If you listen to my radio show on Friday, you'll know I called him out immediately because he had the timeline wrong. Remember that, Mr. Producer? Called him out immediately. He was reporting that the President of the United States told Flynn to contact the Russians during the course of the election. Now, if he had, that's still not illegal or unconstitutional retroactively. Look how we have to talk about this nonsense. Turns out it was December 29th, as I recall, which would be well after the election and soon before the president's swearing in and inauguration. That would be Trump. Most of the major media ran with this, even though Brian Ross had one anonymous source, probably the ghost that sits on his shoulder. And they ran with it. And here's cut 19. Here's what he said, as I recall. Go.
He has promised full cooperation to the Mueller team. He's prepared to testify, we are told by a confidant, against President Trump, against members of the Trump family, and others in the White House. He's prepared to testify that President Trump, as a candidate, Donald Trump, directed him to make contact with the Russians, which contradicts all that Donald Trump has said at this point.
All right, that's enough. So obviously he didn't do that. And Brian Ross has a habit of making things up, as I pointed out Friday. And I pointed out Friday how wrong he was, that's not the what's been reported. That's not what took place in open court either. So it was wrong. So then they had to clarify. Cut 20, go.
And, David, a clarification tonight on something one of Flynn's confidants told us, and we reported earlier today. He said the president had asked Flynn to contact Russia during the campaign. He's now clarifying that, saying, according to Flynn, candidate Trump asked him during the campaign to find ways to repair relations with Russia and other hotspots. And then after the election, the president-elect asked him and told him to contact Russia on issues, including working together to fight ISIS.
Oh, working together to fight ISIS? We can't do that. But anyway, the guy's a buffoon. He's an absolute buffoon. He's been suspended without pay for 4 weeks. He should be fired. He should not have a job again in journalism. He should be a tenured, professor somewhere where you can do this sort of stuff. Although apparently they can do it in the media too. All right, Mr. Producer, your call on the calls, as I don't have my call screen up. Who do you recommend? Do we have anybody who disagrees with my genius so far? Yeah. Ian in New York, the great WABC. Go.
I'd like to. James Comey testified before Congress that Trump told him any bad satellites that are in my orbit, go after them. That sounds like somebody that's not obstructing the man. And then the FBI agent, all these liberals wanted to push the agenda that Comey was looking for more money to go and Trump fired him because he was looking for more money. And the head FBI agent testified before Congress that that's not the case. It did not go down like that. It had nothing to do with the investigation of being looked at. So Comey is just a flat-out liar. And that's already, just like Clapper, just like Brennan, all three of them, they're liars. And they get caught up. How are you obstructing? What's impeachable when you tell somebody the opposite? Go after anybody around me that's doing something bad. That's what he told Comey. And Comey, because...
I got it. You already said it. And those are excellent points, Ian. Excellent points.